I say regatta, my life's not.
I know.
You're just gonna say it. Yeah.
Is
that this weekend?
And I just love the line. He said, what was his job description? He
When
said,
is the
Dave
This
said,
weekend.
I need you so I can go sailing.
Run the business so I can. say
That's it. That was his job description when he hired in 29 years ago.
I didn't realize he'd been here that long.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you'll be taking over?
No.
Once he leaves?
Nope, nope, not for all the team.
Anybody named yet?
Pardon?
Anyone named yet?
We have, we picked a guy from Florida. Can't tell you much about him.
Does he know anything about winter?
Well, we had that situation in Charlotte
Oh, yeah.
with a
Figured it
service.
was just a seasonal thing.
We hired a service manager. After several visits, and he brought his wife, and she went to look at houses.
Mhm.
Well, they finalized, and she came back and she walked in and she said, they get 100 inches, they were from the Gulf Coast. She said, they get 100 inches of snow here. And of course, we all went, yeah, and she looked at her husband and said, have fun, I'm going back to Texas. You can come or you can stay. And he looked at everybody and said, boy, I'm really sorry, you guys. And he got in our rental car and drove away and used our plane tickets and flew back to Texas.
Oh, geez.
We're on Zoom and we're on YouTube.
Okay.
So if you'd like to start the meeting, I'll take roll.
Okay, take the roll, please.
All right. Michael Behrman,
Present.
John Leo here, Bob Thoma,
Here,
Kathy Macho.
Here.
We have 4, we have a quorum. And really, I apologize that the agenda is skewed sideways like that, but I rotated it so that the site plan would be the proper way when we move on to that.
you have an approval of the minutes?
Well, we don't have to do that.
We don't
This
have
is
to
a
do
special
any of
meeting. So the
Okay.
only thing on the agenda is the discussion for the variance
Yes.
on Third Street. We'll approve the minutes for the previous July meeting and this meeting
Okay,
at our next meeting.
okay, sounds good. And would you like to tell us what's going on,
Absolutely, I can.
please?
And let me first thank you guys for taking time out of your afternoon, especially you hustling over from Myers
Oh, okay.
to make this happen. We'll try to keep it as quick and clean as possible in terms of how we explain it. Based on what we had talked about the last time we were all together, and I think this was the same forum we had then. We were proposed with the option of discussing with Tina, the neighbor, how to address the mass, much like you maybe suggested. Lee, you remember him, the homeowner, had, I don't know if he actually had any verbal communications, but he did have some email communications with her. And basically she wasn't moving from her original statement. And so, with that being said, based on what, we had discussed, our only other options when Jeff and I talked about it was to completely move the garage out of that setback or in its encroaching manner. So now it's no longer violating structure. The new proposed structure would be well within the setback. And so that was our approach. That was really the only angle we had to go with. So now we're no longer asking for a variance in the garage. We're asking for an approval on the garage. And we're still obviously requesting a variance in the second story addition and then the connector between this new garage structure as an accessory structure and the existing house. So we basically, the 2 that we talked about, we pared it down to 1, or excuse me, the 3 we talked about, we pared down to 2. So now that's our direction that we thought was the only really reasonable solution to our issue. The garage itself, as you look at it, it's a bit deeper than the old garage, but it's quite a bit narrower than the old garage. Old garage is 26, this is 20. So we subtracted most of that square footage to make it conform out of the side of it.
Did you make it longer coming forward then?
Yeah, I did. It was 21 feet, it's now 24, so we added 3 feet to the depth. but we'll cap it within the setbacks.
I apologize for anybody that might watch the video. The computer is running a little slow, so it's having trouble.
Oh,
I
okay.
wanted to zoom in so that we could see that better. And there it is. And just to reiterate, with the changed location of the garage, it now complies with zoning. So really, they've modified their proposal. They're only looking for a variance for that area that's labeled proposed connector. And we can see the blue dashed line of the rear yard setback for the principal home. It's the portion of that proposed connector that lies to the north of that outside. And then, of course, the proposed second story addition, again, the dashed blue line is the setback for the principal building. And although they're not proposing for the purple shaded area there, they're not expanding the footprint. They are expanding the volume by adding a second floor to that area, which still does require a variance. So those two areas, the proposed second story addition and the proposed connector, are the areas that they are requesting a variance for at this point in time. The garage now complies with zoning.
Okay,
Okay. Do I understand that the roof lines on the garage were changed from what?
It's a different form, matches more of the architecture of the house now.
Okay.
But
Okay.
it's a smaller form, and so we tried to come up with something that's more efficient and again, more representative of the current house.
Okay, so is the,
We were trying to work with what we had previously, and now we can do a new building, so it's not exceeding anything that we were asking for previously. The heights are still the
Right.
same.
okay,
It's just a different form.
okay. I was thinking that there was some discussion at the last one about, I don't know. if it was
Yeah,
the
Bob had
pitch or the
suggested
roof or
one of the back of it had a dormer that made it look trapezoidal shape.
Oh,
And we were thinking, we tried to propose to Tina that we drop that and push it back, but
mhm.
I don't know if it was an understanding of how that worked or didn't work, but Lee attempted to communicate, but she fell back to her original statement.
Was there, not, you guys were within the setbacks for an accessory dwelling. But, did the homeowner next door, to the east, see these drawings at all?
Yeah, we shared her with, we
What was
shared with her what we were working on.
Yeah, and what
And
was,
we did try to find a common ground. We put ivy on the building. We did exactly what Bob had suggested in the dormer. We gave her three-dimensional renderings of that. And I don't know, again, if it resonated with her in any sense. Her brother's
She
here.
didn't, yeah, and she didn't seem to have a negative, I can't.
She was like, yeah, that's Andy. Andy, this is Lee's wife.
Hi.
Andy.
hi,
Nice to
Andy.
meet you.
Nice to meet you.
She didn't have a negative tone, but her final statement was, I'm gonna stand with the current. We had asked her to write, could you write a new letter in support with this new direction? And her response was, I am comfortable with that, whatever decision the team makes, but I will not be writing a secondary letter.
Okay.
So that would imply that she was comfortable sticking with her original statement.
Which then pushed us in knowing and understanding that the only way we could come back with this modified design that Bob had suggested with the dormer, is the only way we could come back with you guys with that proposal would be if in fact we had an endorsing letter from her, because it really came down to, because we were asking for a variance there, that, one of the, I think it was number 4 on the statement, that is it causing adverse damage to the neighboring property? And the answer to that question would be yes. And unless she was willing to release that, we really thought our only recourse was to make the building conform. And so that's what we're presenting with you today.
And I guess the question is she aware that you went to the lengths of, or the length of modifying the design totally and, pushing things back 6.5 feet
Yeah, we
That kind of
provided
stuff.
all the dimensions.
Yeah,
She's aware, she's
Yeah.
aware of, the neighbor is aware of
Yeah.
the new plan.
Mhm.
Okay.
And we.
And it was
called
like
her.
on a Friday that we were trying to get, because the correspondence with her wasn't consistent. So we were pressed against the wall on Friday to come up with something. So we worked through the weekend to come up with this. So I could get it to Jeff first thing Monday morning.
And we did reach out to her on Friday. We gave her a phone call. But we never got a hold of her to see if she wanted to talk further about it, but I think she was pretty confident in her.
So this is a new garage, so you'll tear down the old one, put in a new foundation.
Yeah, and then that also addresses the steep slope situation for engineering, because obviously this new structure will be a brand new engineered structure, so that part will be kind of handled simultaneously with this, and so it kind of kills two birds with one stone in that one. You know, and kind of reiterating a little bit what we talked about in the previous meeting is that the connector aspect of it, smaller than 50% of the mass of the side of that elevation, so we conform to that, as well as you know, the precedent of the neighboring properties having the same. One of the, you know, things is it kind of continues with what your neighbors are doing, and yet that connector is now that it's a conforming building, is in fact kind of mirroring what the neighboring properties have. And we did, obviously, in the last meeting, the second story addition, which impacts the neighbor to the west, they obviously saw this and they wrote a letter of endorsement of the project on the second story addition.
Now, from a technical standpoint, given that it's new construction, doesn't it require a variance in order to be within the setback?
Well, let's back up a second. So that garage is a detached accessory structure.
Right.
So it has different setbacks. The blue line that we see that goes through the proposed connector and that goes through the house, that's the setback for the principal building, the house. That farther, the
Which is
green
the blue
line.
line.
So this blue line is for the home itself. This green line here is the setback for this building. So this garage complies with the setbacks.
I just wanted that clarified.
Yeah.
Because it
Thanks.
might not have been 100% clear.
Okay,
So that one is now in the clear.
Yeah. If they weren't proposing to do the proposed connector there, the breezeway between and the second floor, if they just came to me administratively and said, we want to build that garage, I
It
would
would
be
have
able
been
to
okay.
administratively approve it.
Right. So the purple is the increase in the volume, which is technically is
Second
a,
floor, right?
right, we're expanding on a nonconformity. And then the connector needs a variance because,
Because that's new. And it doesn't meet the code because of that blue line,
oh, because you,
right? We're looking at that,
so it's being considered as part of the principal residence.
correct?
The garage is a moot point.
Yep.
Right, for
It's in
our
clear.
purposes tonight,
It's in the clear.
the garage is fine. Realistically, we're only looking at this section here. And this section here. This new garage meets with, for zoning purposes, it's fine. They will still have a discussion regarding, at the planning commission, regarding the restricted bluff zone, making sure that the work is to be done in a safe manner, that they don't damage the bluff in any way and cause any trouble for their property or the property above them. They will also have a discussion at the planning commission regarding the second floor use of the property as guest quarters.
Which
And-
is
and there will-
limited to.
And there will be that special land use discussion regarding that.
Any other comments from the board?
excuse me, and is that because of that 30-foot, that blue line setback that runs?
No, in our previous,
We talked about, I can't remember which
Yeah.
line it was.
and actually that line is not shown on here
Okay.
in this site plan here. On the previous one, there was a red line that was kind of jagged that came through this area here. And that was denoting the restricted bluff zone.
Okay.
But that's
okay.
the domain of the planning.
That's, yes, the
And they will
planning
require
commission.
engineering
Yep.
So at no point does a garage that never existed before because the old one's gonna be taken down. Even though it's connected with a connector, all that's new construction, so only a portion, only the garage is considered an accessory dwelling.
So we have language in the zoning code that discusses when a garage no longer is a separate accessory building
Yeah,
and when it becomes part of the principal building. And we have an allowance that somebody can have a home and a detached accessory building, but still have some type of a breezeway so that they can access it in the winter without having to go outside. And the rule for determining how we maintain that garage as an accessory building versus fully part of the home is if that breezeway, this green area here, we look at the common wall between this area and this area. And if this exceeds 50% of the width here,
got it.
then this is now part of the home.
Okay.
If it's smaller, if it's smaller, then this remains a detached accessory.
That's why you
Yeah,
had to stick 50% or less.
yeah, the connector can't exceed a certain width.
So that garage
It
maintains
maintains its independent.
designation as an accessory.
If
Okay.
it became part of the principal residence, then you'd be back into the variance because of
Yeah.
the setbacks.
Right, but it's a luxury that you guys as a city provide, you know, it's a nice element, and it's been utilized.
Oh,
As I
yeah.
mentioned with the adjacent property.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen the adjacent properties and. you
There's
know,
a benefit and a drawback.
Yep.
The benefit of having it remain that separate building is they get that different setback line. The drawback is having that second floor, they now have to go for special land use request. If it was all connected, they wouldn't need that special land use, but they would be restricted to it.
So if there was no second floor, and it was just a garage, they wouldn't have to go before planning. But because there is a second floor that's gonna be used as sleeping quarters.
They wouldn't have to do the special land use request, but because this work is all being done within that restricted bluff zone, we have to make sure that it's done to a standard to make sure that it's gonna be safe.
I get that
Yeah.
part of it, but for
Otherwise,
special
yes.
land use, they would.
Okay.
I appreciate it. It's always good to hear it again and.
To make sure that we comply, we should have a motion to open a public hearing.
Yes.
So moved.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Comments from the public?
No comment.
Oh, and I move to close the public hearing.
Oh, you're happy with this?
Oh, yeah. From what Tina has said, she's happy as with a clam.
Okay.
Fine.
Motion to close?
Now I motion to close.
Second?
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We want to do a vote? Whether to accept, how do we do this? 2 votes or 1 motion?
Well, we should briefly run through our decision matrix thing, but then if somebody wants to do a motion based on the discussion.
Well, we went through all of the criteria at the last meeting, and there were 2, I think, that we all agreed had failed. And I believe that both of those have been addressed.
Okay.
So I'm comfortable that we meet all the criteria of the checklist.
That's fine, I can refer to that.
Based on
previous
that,
meeting.
I would make a motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
You want to?
Let's do a roll call on this one.
Okay.
And we'll start with Kathy Machel,
yes.
Bob Thoma,
Yes.
John Leo,
Yes.
Michael Behrman.
Yes.
All right. Motion is approved.
Thank you very much, and thank you again for taking your afternoon.
Well,
Thank you
and
very much.
I wanna thank you all for, going through the process, trusting the process and making the modifications and coming up with something that is, from what I can tell, a win-win for everybody. Doing it in fast.
Well, you guys made that happen, you know, and I appreciate Bob's thought for speed, even our last meeting.
Personal opinion, I like the design.
Well, good.
Mhm.
That means we're doing the right thing. And I think that's what, and you asked me, because I know you can come up with something. Remember when you told me that when we were leaving?
Aside from the other benefits involved here, I like the idea that you're gonna take the old one down, that we're moving it over, so airflow is gonna happen through there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The deer won't have to jump the fence anymore.
Well, we'll make it easier for them.
But also more open space and more light to the
Well,
neighborhood.
they live right there.
Yeah, we're making a bad situation.
Remember that 120 inches of snow?
Yeah.
That's a reality.
Yeah.